And I'm very happy to, my guest today is Jared Barty, Wilkie Farr and Gallagher partner, part of the Corporate Financial Services Department and the chair of the Sports Transaction Practice, and a longtime SLA member. Welcome.
Thanks, Bobby. Good to be here.
I was so happy to have you. We often, and as our general practice, start off to just give our guests an opportunity to talk about what their practice is, in your case, at your current law firm, and the path you've taken to get there, in whatever way you want to discuss it. You left Northwestern Law School, and would be one way to do the path.
Sure.
Just let's talk about what you're doing these days.
Sure. So I've been at Wilkie for about a year now, I guess a year as of last week, and kind of hit the ground running. I came on as chair of the Sports Transactions Practice. I'm practicing for, I guess in September, it'll be 30 years in the sports, entertainment, publishing, media spaces. And here, while I sit in the corporate group, transactions practice, a pretty broad-based practice. It's everything from pure corporate matters, M&A and investments in teams and properties, tech products, to commercial deals, naming rights deals, sponsorship deals, media rights transactions, real estate development, but it also includes litigation and also investigations. So we're a pretty broad-based group. The firm has been in the sports sector since going back to 1933 when we represented the National League, and then our former distinguished partner, Bowie Kuhn, was commissioner of Major League Baseball. So we did a lot of work for baseball, and we're proud to continue that relationship. So we're kind of, I like to call it sort of Wilkie Sports 360.
Cool. And how did you end up in that seat? What's the path?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to be in sports, right? I played pretty competitive high school basketball. And anybody watching who's heard the story knows I have to throw in that I was, a member of the starting five at Cambridge and Latin High School that won a state championship that was ranked nationally. My backcourt partner ended up playing pro, and I was the fifth starter though, right? And I realized at the time that the fifth starter wasn't going to the league, right? And so, well, I had my fair share of Division III offers. I knew I wasn't going to the league, but understood basketball and the sport and the culture. And I wanted to go to law school. My grandmother told me from a very young age I was going to be a lawyer. I didn't know why, but I also knew not to question her. So I figured I could marry the two. I'd go to law school and become an agent. My best friend played football at University of Michigan in some really good years. And my backcourt partner played basketball at Michigan. They won the national championship. So I had, connectivity to both storied programs. And so that was my thinking. And I was in the Career Center. Back in the days, we had hanging folders, like pre-internet. And I read about David Stern. And I read about sort of his story and his connection to Proskauer and how he became commissioner. I thought, that's a pretty cool job. I want to do that one day. And as fate would have it, I interviewed and ended up getting an offer at Proskauer, and I joined their labor and employment group, which at the time was one of the, and still is, I presume, the top labor practice in the country, labor employment practice in the country, and also was in sports practice, which has a storied history in the sports practice. So that's where I cut my teeth. I worked on NBA related matters, primarily related to collective bargaining. And that was incredible, right? I literally held lit bags, right? I carried the bags, and I was happy to do that because the number of the things were high profile that we worked on, right? I was involved in, doing work going back to the 95 lockout, which people forget occurred. It was a shortened lockout, right? That didn't really affect the season. So it was precursor to 98. And then I went in-house, and I did 17 years of in-house work. I left Proskauer, went to, at the time it was called Black Entertainment Network, now BET Networks. And, I had the real fortune to work there when Bob Johnson still owned the company, and worked for Deborah Lee when she was general counsel. And then she ultimately went on to become chairperson of the firm. And, she really taught me that business. She sort of, I considered it a school without walls, right? Yeah, you could take on whatever you were capable of handling, right? And so, within a short period of time there, I ended up overseeing what we call the Productions Group, which was 3 networks. It's BET on Jazz, which is the Jazz Network's Action Pay-Per-View, the magazine division, consumer products, and affiliate and consumer marketing. So it really got a robust taste of the entertainment business, and then decided I needed to be in LA or New York, right, for what I wanted to do in the entertainment space. And ended up going to New York and went to Scholastic Entertainment. So the book publishing company would take book properties and turn those into ancillary media properties. There's TV shows, but it's also consumer products, making the lunchbox, the backpack, pencils, both domestically and internationally. And then went to Maxim in the early 2000s, in the early days of what they called the Lad Mags, and Maxim had just hit the US. I was the first US general counsel. And so did a lot of the magazine publishing work, media work, as well as the events, and they became known for some of their events. And then got a call from two partners at Proskauer, who I'd worked with previously, to ask if I'd be interested in a meeting relative to the XFL, so the first XFL. And I took the meeting and had several meetings and thought this would be a great way to get back into the sports space, right? I'd launched this league, maybe the last 2, 3, 5 years. Obviously it lasted, it was a lot shorter than that. But my thinking was I'd get in on the ground floor, right? Like no documents prepared. It was preparing the player contract, the stadium agreements, the office leases, the executive agreements, negotiating everything to the IP, the logos, right? It was a true soup to nuts situation that I walked into. And I was the last person there to wind down the affairs, right? And unravel all of the deals or negotiate out of all the deals we had, which we did in a stand-up fashion. It's probably one of the most beneficial experiences I've had, starting from launch to shutdown. Became general counsel of the USTA, which was another great experience. The one person that that I've ever considered to be a true mentor is a gentleman by the name of Alan Schwartz, who was the chair, who taught me a tremendous amount just about business in general, and allowed me to have the type of in-house kind of GC relationship that you want with the CEO, a trusted advisor, on everything that transpired. Right. And so I grew up a lot working with him and learned a tremendous amount. And we remained friends for many, many years after that. And then went to the NBA and stepped out of being a lawyer for a while, and went into the team marketing business operations group, which was TEAMBO. It's akin to being an internal management consulting group, right, to the teams throughout the league. In my role, I had 9 markets that I covered. And I would advise team owners and team executives on everything related to revenue and expense at the teams. Ways in which they can improve on their functions tied to revenue, the organizational efficiency, not taking advantage of the number of categories that might be available. You look at league best practices. Certain sponsorship categories might not be maximized at the team level. They might not have enough people selling. The average age of sellers might not be there. You might listen in on calls and realize that there need to be some training, or just sometimes you need a change in the direction of leadership. And out of that, I ended up reconnecting and working for Bob Johnson in Charlotte. That was one of my markets. And I had the privilege of working for Bob again, as well as for Michael Jordan. And so that was an incredible experience, kind of reporting into 2 sectors, right? Sort of the business and the basketball. Great opportunity. Was offered a chance to go back to WWE. They were with XFL, NBC, and WWE. Was general counsel there, and just touching everything globally, right? Public company and just doing every sector, from music to live events to venues to publishing to robust consumer products business, and then decided that I wanted to go back to private practice, right? To go in to see if I could do what I think a lot of us talk about doing, right? Is can I maximize this Rolodex that I've created over the years? And oftentimes when I speak to people of a different vintage, I have to explain what the Rolodex is, right?
You beat me to the punch on that one. Yeah.
I had to.
I've gotten a blank look lecturing at schools where I say your Rolodex.
That's right. My base of contacts, and went to, from Errant Fox, that had been a firm that I'd worked with in Charlotte, and so a long time partner with Bob Johnson in terms of law firms, and went there and just started up my practice. was there about 5 years and was recruited by Herrick Feinstein, um, which was just an incredible firm, right? Smaller firm in the space, punches way above its weight, incredible people, great partners. And we did some pretty interesting work there, right? I just, I had a nice run and we really built that practice up. It was already pretty formidable, but we added to it significantly. And then was recruited by O'Melveny to come in and be a co-chair of the sports practice there, and to build that back up. It had a history in the, very prominent, history in LA and Southern California, entertainment Hollywood space, done some sports in the past and was interested in back in the space. So was part of a team that built that. And then had some conversations with Wilkie, where I am now. And Wilkie, as I mentioned at the start of the program, Wilkie's been doing work with MLB and has been in sports space since 1933, and wanted to take a step in that. And so I came on board here to kind of build that up. And long elevator ride, but that's the story.
Well, it's really great. And I think there's two concepts that you've sort of touched on, and I think we can chat a little bit about. It's in the context of building your professional CV.
Yeah.
I think there are two concepts we have to address, and those are apprenticeship and mentorship. And oftentimes there's been discussion, I think more recently, about why does law school have to be 3 years? Why can't it be 2 years and a year of a formal apprenticeship? I applaud the idea personally.
Sure.
But once, we all know that once you get out of law school and once you get your first job, usually in a law firm, but pretty much anywhere, you got a lot to learn. And it's truly an apprenticeship. And an apprenticeship, to my mind's eye, only is successful is if you have good mentorship.
Agree.
Does that you agree? I mean, how do you feel about that? And what is how do you take on a role as a mentor once you've built the experience to help the apprentices move along in their careers?
Sure. I thought about this, anticipating that might be a question. And so my drive in this morning. I've been extremely fortunate to have people who have taken an interest in me, my career, starting at very junior stages of my career. When I started out a law firm, I had a one-on-one relationship with one of the most senior partners in the firm, a guy, Howard Gans, who was one of the godfathers of, if not the godfather of sports labor law. I had Howard as my firm mentor. And I had the opportunity to work with Dan Halem, who's now the deputy commissioner and chief legal officer of Major League Baseball and a longtime friend. And I'm happy and proud to say a client. And so I had people who were willing to invest in me and teach me basic things. I think you learn at a junior stage at a firm how to write a letter, right? How to analyze a contract, how to respond appropriately and timely, and recognize the importance of being responsive to clients, right? And just knowing that, like, we're fortunate to have the opportunity to serve our clients, and we have to deliver at a certain level because that's the expectation, right? And it's sort of this, it was a level set for me, right? And defining what, or understanding what excellence looked like from that brand where I was, right? Like, this is how it's done at a very high level. So I was very fortunate to have that opportunity. And I think people who cared about me and my development. When I went to BET, I had, like I said, Deborah Lee and Marita Coley. I reported to the two of them. Marita was sort of the managing attorney for the group, and Deb was the GC, and then became chair. But they would let me take on new tasks, but stayed with me with my work, would actually review it and comment on it. It would encourage me to take on new areas, right? So I was empowered to take on new areas and new divisions, and ultimately I got named head of the group. But it was everything from, this is why an indemnification paragraph is important. This is why the language, or the one that we were all tasked with going back to and remeeting, right? With COVID, right? The force majeure provision, right? And at a company that was doing live events at the time, right? That was a very important provision. And so, I had people who spent time with me, right? And walked me through. And I think what I realized this afternoon was I was fortunate to have direct lines of communication. I've never been in groups or with organizations where I was the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth person on the team, right? I was either leading or I was reporting into the lead, if not the CEO, the GC, who was one person removed from the CEO. So I was thrown into it early and I just didn't know any better, right? It was just like, okay, I have something to deliver. And then I realized later, like, it's not everybody's experience. And so now when I work with, younger attorneys in my group, I'm old fashioned. I still write. I write in red pen. I mark up the documents. I ask for meetings in my office. I want people to sit across and I'll turn the paper over. And this is why this is important. And this is why I highlighted it. It may be a non-issue, but this is what I'm looking at. And so people understand my thinking and my reasoning based on what I had been taught. And I'm still pretty quick to say, all right, let's put the issues list together, and you're going to tick through the issues list on the phone to the client, right? Like once I get that level of confidence that they can do it, and I give them a heads up and like, this is what I want to see, because oftentimes I'm still going through the analysis, right? As they're talking and the client's talking, I might be flipping a page. I might want to read something, but I like to empower people early on, not before they're ready, but once they are ready, give them that opportunity to have direct client contact. And I think in our space, depending on the matter, that's something that is acceptable, in managing the team and running the team. And then, I like people to be in on the calls, even when I'm running it, right? If I'm the only one talking, I want people to hear, right? And even if it's a speaker call, I announce who's in the room, but I may pause and be like, this is why this is a crazy position. We're never going to do that. I don't know what this person is thinking, or, that's a good point, right? Like, remember that, mark that, right? And so it's like, you have to be involved. This is an apprenticeship business. And I think with COVID, we lost a lot of that. You don't pick it up on the video screen on the Zoom. It's just not the same. You walk down to someone's office. I'm quick to bring my little football down there and throw it to people and, back and forth while we chat. There's just something to doing that. But the third piece to that, right? It's you're sort of the mentee, you're the mentor, right? But there's also, sponsorship, right? And I think that is as important, having a good sponsor as a mentor. And sponsor is that person who's in the room, right? And the sponsor, that person is that person advocating for you when you're not there and you don't even know about it sometimes, right? The mentor, call me, I'll teach you, I'll help you. The sponsor is someone who has, some clout within the organization, who's actually going to advocate for you, for your advancement, talk about, your positive attributes, to talk about the fact that this is someone who's a valuable member of the organization, of the community. And so often, people who don't have that or don't know that they have it, sometimes they leave, right? Sometimes they don't know how to. Sometimes opportunities don't come their way because as you go farther up in the organization, sometimes people aren't touching or aren't feeling the direct effect and don't know what you've done, but it's having someone in the room to be your champion. And so
oftentimes in the entertainment space referred to as your rabbi.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
But you need that, because I think one of the things that we don't get, or certainly I really never got, and I don't think they teach much in law school, is the fact that you're dealing with people.
That's right.
And it's more than people are the road to building relationships, but people are also really the fiat with which we deal in our practice.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you talked about, you said, write a letter. It's one of the first things, you're doing research, putting stuff together, maybe writing something up, but a letter is the first people-facing thing a lot of young lawyers do. And teaching them how to write a letter, which everybody says, well, they know how to write. No, they might not know how to write. And that letter sets the basis for the relationship, even if it's not your client, even if it's the other side, as it were. But that letter and how you write it is really an important skill set. And that's one of the things that I think it's really important when you're mentoring younger lawyers, to get them to understand you're not criticizing them when you say, don't do this or do that. you're helping them to build that professional relationship because that creates the initial dialogue. And that is so critically important.
It's absolutely right. I think some people train sort of in the way they were trained, right? And I had my fair share of tough love moments. Trust me. I tried to avoid that, right? But I'm quick to call someone out if I think that they really haven't put the work in, or they're not being genuine about kind of the research they've done. I'm quick to say, did you really look at that? Because I looked at it and I got something totally different. So like, walk me through that, right? Or I can't even count the number of people who want to break in to the business, right? Well, what would you suggest? I suggest you read ABC, you read these publications. Then you circle up with them later at another point. Did you read any of this stuff? No, not yet. Oh, okay. You've told me how serious you are about the industry and about my time, frankly.
Yeah.
But I do my fair share of touching folks at all levels. So in college, people looking to bring in what major do I take? Well, take whatever you want to be passionate about, right? Maybe take some business in it, but I'm not one to say you have to take this major to be in the business. And then the best question I think to throw to someone is like, what do you want to do in the sports space? It's a pretty broad industry, right? And then when you get the folks who can tell you what they want to do, then they're a little more serious. When you get the people who say, well, it sounds cool and I like sports. Well, they need a little more work, I think. And it's the same here. Firm level, I want to do what you do. Why? And what exactly do I do? Right? If you don't know what I do, then I don't know that you necessarily want to do it. But for those who come in and are serious about it, or as associate, I say, stay in touch with me, even if just to let me know how you're doing, or stop by my office. And I got one today, and it was the note of, hey, Jared, I hope you're well. Just wanted to say hi. Right? So now he's top of mind, right? And I have something because he sent me that. There's something that came up and I thought of him right away. Right. And that's how this industry works.
That's the people part.
That's right.
That's the people part. That's about building relationships, which is one of the most important assets we have as lawyers. I often, and I've talked on this show a bunch of times, but when I talk to young lawyers, I say, look, you're trained to do research. I used to say, look anything up in a book, but I don't know if anybody uses books anymore. You're trained to, you can find out a problem, the answer to a problem. Partner walks in your office, says, hey, research this. And you can go to the resources and you're trained to figure it out. But in your relationships, you might have a classmate or a colleague that specializes in that area. And this thing is a very valuable tool. And you pick it up and you call someone and you say, hey, I've got this issue. And your colleagues go, oh, well, look at this, this, and this. Is that any less valuable than trudging through screens? No, it's about problem solving. And we shouldn't be so constrained by what we think the proper way to solve a problem is, because there's lots of ways to skin that cat. And I think it's really important that people understand that for the very reason you just discussed. Somebody came in, they maintained a relationship, something came up, connectivity, serendipity, opportunity. And I think that's just the nature of what we, the great poet, no man is an island, no lawyer is an island.
True.
Whether you're, working in-house or you're in a law firm, it's the people around you that not only help you, but who you can help, because the collective then rises and more people say, oh, wow, look at those guys work together. They're a great team. And guys like you and I that come out of a world of team sports, we get it. And I think that value is there to building anything, is knowing those relationships and putting a team together, and hopefully having the no a-holes rule, which is no matter how great they are, if they upset the ship, is there really a value to that player?
No, that's right. I mean, the value of the network, right? I think you and I met probably through SLA, and over the years we've called each other for different situations, different matters. Have you seen this before? Or have you heard about what's going on over here? And it's just the network, right? And it's been something that I've relied upon throughout my career. And, I think it's what is tremendously undervalued is EQ, right? Everybody's as an assumption, I think that most folks are smart in this space. But like, how many people have decent EQ? Can they read situations? Can they read the room? Can they connect with people? Right. And I look for that quite a bit.
Yeah,
Right.
it's really important. We've had this great general discussion, and I had a whole list of things that I wanted to talk to you about. The changing landscape of esports, which is
Yeah.
so dramatically different than it was 5 years ago.
That's right.
And just for a quick second, I just want, your take, because I look at it now and I see businesses, and obviously if I'm talking about any of your clients, I'm going to have to, you can say no, but I look at a company like FaZe Clan. They went from being a team to a media business
Mhm.
in many respects. And I think we're in a situation where, as things are changing in many ways in the esports world, it's different to succeed. You have to be broader. You have to be what you talked about, all the touch points of a business, what you talked about when you were with WWE, everything from merchandising and on and on and on. And I think the esports world, as it's grown from gamer owners to, VC money businesses,
Yeah.
to survive, it has to change dramatically.
No, I think that's right. And I was fortunate to represent a number of investors in some of the earlier leagues. And, my take on it at all times has been, it's all about content. Right? It's a content business, right? This isn't just a team, right? This is about the brand and how you can recognize the benefits of the content, right, that the brand participates in. And that's what we're seeing. Those teams that have created brands for themselves, I think those are the ones that you see are still having some success in being able to sort of weather what I'll call the storm. I don't think it's a one team sector, right? Like, you can't just have one team and focus on that. You have to figure out how to diversify the brand, right, and go into different verticals. And we're seeing that, right? The rush of investment capital in the space has declined over the last year or so. I still believe that the video game industry is going to thrive.
Oh yeah,
I think
100%.
I think we'll see a retooling of what's involved in esports specifically. And I think top tier organizations will find their way, but those that were heavily dependent on sponsorship or ad spending, I think they'll have to pivot quickly to a different model, or I think they're going to be victims of the current circumstances, right? So
Yeah.
we'll see who can move and pivot, but I think you're absolutely right. Those brands that became sort of media companies, or that recognize the benefit and value of the content that either they generate or that they participate in, are the ones that will weather the storm best.
Well, I could talk to you for another 2 days, but we just got a little window here. But I really appreciate your taking the time to have a little chat with us and talk about some of the bigger issues in the practice of law that I think we both have enjoyed throughout our careers, and we got more miles in the tank, more gas in the tank to push us along the road a little farther. But before we get off, I have a couple of my ad requirements here, because all media, you have to have the ads. And so everybody, it's time to renew your SLA membership. If you haven't renewed by the end of this month, which is only a week away, your membership benefits will be shut off. So please go to sportslaw.org, renew your membership. And a lot of really great things coming up. On March 8th, we have a webinar on immigration issues in sports, which should be a pretty great program. And then in May, live annual SLA conference in LA, May 11th to 13th, focusing on the athlete. Program set, and it's very strong, really interesting people, leaders in the industry as always. And most importantly, going back to what Jared and I were talking about, there is no better relationship building place in the world of sports than the SLA annual conference. And I'm not saying that just because of my history with the organization, but those who have been members would echo everything I've just said. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Jared, thank you so much. It was great catching up, and see you soon, I hope.
Thanks for having